You're watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. From Toronto, Ontario, I'm Catherine Bullock. Assalamu alaikum and greetings of peace. Today is International Women's Day. We have an interview about women's shelters during the time of COVID. But first, some news headlines. Temporary ceasefire allows evacuation of Ukrainian civilians. Testimony reveals RCMP ordered banks to freeze accounts of Convoy protesters in Ottawa. Brampton trio face 78 charges for breaking into places of worship. Awareness and Unity Week commemorate third anniversary of Christchurch Massacre in New Zealand. And now the details. A temporary ceasefire between Moscow and Kiev forces was declared yesterday to evacuate civilians through humanitarian corridors from 5 major cities in Ukraine, including the capital. The heavy snowfall that started in the region made the conditions even more difficult for the Ukrainians fleeing the war, while the humanitarian aid teams continue their work under challenging conditions. A top UN refugee official announced yesterday that 2 million people have fled Ukraine in what they say is possibly the fastest growing refugee crisis in Europe since World War II. Assistant RCMP Commissioner Michael Arcan testified Monday at a House of Commons Finance Committee that is investigating the government's use of the Emergencies Act. He said that the RCMP only sent the names of those involved in the Ottawa protests to banks. Angelina Mason, Vice President of the Canadian Bankers Association, testified that they relied primarily on the RCMP's list to freeze accounts, but did freeze some accounts based on the bank's usual risk assessment procedures. Small donations were not frozen, she claimed. Yesterday, Tamara Litch, co-organizer of Ottawa protests, was released on bail to await trial. Peel Regional Police laid 78 charges on 3 individuals from Brampton, Ontario, after they broke into multiple places of worship from November 2021 to March from different faith groups. The team allegedly stole money from donation boxes. In a news release, people say that they have not found the break-ins to be motivated by hate, but will continue to investigate. They are searching for a 4th suspect. In reaction to the news, the National Council of Canadian Muslims said that all places of worship should be protected and that these spaces often need help to increase security. Muslim organizations in New Zealand will hold a series of events to raise awareness about Islam and build unity in New Zealand as the country commemorates the 3rd anniversary of the Christchurch mosque attacks. Christchurch Mayor Leanne Dalziel told international media sources that the victims' families and survivors did not want government-organised remembrance ceremonies anymore. She said her council wholeheartedly supports the other events being planned. The effort for unity and awareness comes after a massacre across 2 churches in Christchurch left 51 dead and 40 injured in 2019. And that's it for the news. The lockdown has been called an abuser's dream or a shadow pandemic for women who are facing violence in the home, a skyrocketing increase. Unfortunately, Muslims are not immune to this, and we have with us today someone who is trying to help with a series of shelters around Ontario from Sakeenah Homes. Zena Chaudhry, assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the show.
Welcome, Sam. Thank you for having me.
You have a series of shelters for Muslim women. I think it's just around Ontario, but there might be one in Quebec if I can't remember. Tell us about Sakeenah Homes, why you founded it, when you founded it.
So Sakeenah Homes was founded in 2018. So we've been around this is our 5th year now. We started because we saw a lack of services that were culturally and religiously sensitive for multiple people to access. And I had a family friend who actually went through a very difficult divorce where there was a lot of abuse and a lot of manipulation. And through helping her I found where those gaps were. So Sakeenah Homes was started to ensure that Muslim women specifically had somewhere to go to find the help and the assistance that they needed, and they felt like they were comfortable in these places to ask for help and to recover from the trauma that they were facing.
Things have changed, come a long way since I first got involved in this issue. And for me, it's just been sort of a peripheral activity. I was with an organization called Federation of Muslim Women, and together with other organizations, we organized a conference with the then Minister Honorable Isabel Bassett. It was the Minister of Culture, Citizenship and Recreation. And the topic was domestic violence for Muslim women. And at the time, there were no shelters for Muslim women. And we had social workers in the system telling us that Muslim women in the shelters, in the mainstream shelters, were facing ridicule or difficulty. They were being made fun of for fasting. They couldn't get halal meat. The shelter workers would tell them, that your culture is violent and that's why you're here. And there was a great need at the time. We were just sensitizing, doing training for the mainstream. And since then, the shelters like yours have popped up. What do you feel has been the development in the last 20 years in this area?
So I think there's been a lot of development. There are obviously Muslim social services that have started. Masjids are now offering certain social services on the ground as well. And we all know that usually when trouble hits, usually the first place that anyone goes is a masjid. And for them to recognize that these are issues is the first step. And I think many of them have done that. Many of them still do not acknowledge it, but a vast majority of them that we've come into touch with and contact with have acknowledged it. Unfortunately, what happens in mainstream shelters still does happen today. We have many residents who come to us from mainstream shelters who cite the same difficulties, that they're not able to fast because kitchens are not open during the times of suhoor and iftar. They cannot pray because people will take their prayer mat. Their hijabs have been ripped off their head. People have made Islamophobic comments. So unfortunately, some of these things still exist, but we've come a long ways in 20 years.
Now, you mentioned the first port of call being the masjid, and what we learned in our preparations, a lot of imams basically, and even families not supporting the woman. Be patient. This is Allah's test for you. Stay, don't break up the family. We had to get, for that event that we organized in 1998, the Canadian Council of Imams to issue a statement basically in support of the work we were trying to do. What's been your experience with the imams in this regard?
So we've had many imams actually work with us, alongside us, help us. We have a resident imam who actually helps answer any questions that the residents that we have face. So we've had a lot of support, but there are definitely still masjids and imams who are not supportive of the work that Sakeenah Homes does, says that, we do it the wrong way, we're breaking up families, a lot of misconceptions around that. But we're hoping that with time, with education, they come around and they can see how their narrative is really harming the issue, and support the work that we're doing and help us do the work and help us do it even better than we already are.
So let's have a clear statement from you, like what your belief is about this.
In regards to the
regards to the need for having a shelter, in the regards to the need for letting the woman have a safe place to go and not telling her to stay with the abusive husband.
I think we need these shelters. We need these social services. We need to not only be reactive with these shelters, but we need to be proactive in our communities. We need to teach our youth their rights and responsibilities as husbands, as wives, mother-in-laws, father-in-laws, daughter-in-laws, son-in-laws, whatever it may be. There's a lot of misconceptions, and that leads to a lot of issues. We need to educate our youth about mental health difficulties and how to cope with those things, how to talk to your partner before you get married, those conversations that need to be had to alleviate any misconceptions that are there. Unfortunately, this is something that the Muslim community is not immune to. We do face domestic violence as well in alarmingly high rates, not higher than I would say. It's not something that I would say is higher than the norm, but we do face them as well. And because of that, we need to ensure that we have supports there for Muslim women, Muslim children, those who go through these issues. We need to ensure that we're there to support them, because otherwise the only person that benefits from us not talking about it and not helping are the abusers themselves.
So walk us through how it would work. A woman is being beaten and she's watching this show and she says, okay, Sakeenah Homes, you exist, you can help me. What's going to happen next?
So they can call us at our toll-free number, which is 1-888-671-3446. They'll be connected to a caseworker that speaks their language. They can also email us at info@sakeenahhomes.com. And through any of these, they'll be connected with a caseworker, either in their region or someone who speaks the language that they do for ease. After that intake is done, they will identify the needs that they may have and how they need help. And through that, Sakeenah Homes will help. So we are also the first and only Muslim shelter to offer remote casework. So that means that not only do we help those who are in our shelter with wraparound services, but we actually also provide the exact same services to anybody who doesn't live in our shelter. So let's say people don't live near our locations, and we have 4 in Ontario, 1 in Quebec, but they live elsewhere. Let's say they live in Saskatoon, or they live in Newfoundland. They can still reach out, and we will do everything we can to, 1, get them in a safe space. 2, if they already are in a safe space, as in they're with another family member or a friend, then we will help them with whatever casework they need help with, legal supports, mental health counseling, referrals, education, employment, whatever they need. We'll support them with that, and we'll continue to support them and work with them until they're back on their own 2 feet. We don't have a set timeline or deadline during which we need to continue everything. As long as they're working towards their goals, we will continue to help them.
Would you like to share a success story with us?
Sure, absolutely. So over the past 4 years, we've had a lot of women that have come through our doors and found their footing with us and moved on, and had their own apartments, gotten their own jobs. And one really stands out to me. Woman came to us and she was struggling. She had education, so she had a master's degree and everything, and she came to us. She was looking for help. She was being abused by her husband, and she had no family or friends, so we brought her into one of the shelters. Our caseworkers and counselors worked with her, helped her find a job, and today she's living on her own in her own apartment, and we still keep in touch with her. She was actually one of the first residents that we had, and I still keep in touch with her, follow up with her every now and then, and alhamdulillah, so happy to say that she's living a very fulfilling life, and we're very grateful that we were in this position to be able to help her.
How do you get the funding to run all that many homes?
So all of our funding is actually from communities. So that means from your everyday donor like me and you. We have masjids that give us a portion of their zakat or their sadaqah. We have other Muslim charities across Canada that support our work. Penny Appeal Canada, Ask Foundation, Muslim Association of Canada, Human Concern International. There's so many charities out there. All of our partners are listed on our website as well. And we're so grateful for their assistance, because the only time we've ever gotten government funding is actually for COVID relief. Besides that, before and after that, we haven't actually received anything. We are very grateful for what we did receive for COVID relief, but our majority of our funding does come from Muslim donors every now and then also these Muslim organizations that help us.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but if anyone wants to donate, they can look up your website. I think it's sakeenahhomes.com.
That's correct.
And thank you for coming on the show and sharing with us a little snippet into what you're doing.
No, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure. You've been watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Stay safe. Stay tuned for the next episode. God bless. Assalamu alaikum.